Hey, what's going on, Ram fans? April 15th, Rams Up update, a day closer to Christmas Day, otherwise known as Draft Day to us Rams fans. A first round pick once again. Getting excited. I can't wait to see how this plays out. Rams going to trade up? Probably not. Stand pat? Possibly. Trade back? Very possible. Bordering on likely at this point if they can find a trading partner. Hey, we have some more draft content coming up too. Ian has been going position by position, as has Scott Richmond, and we'll have more of that between now and draft day, as well as some more mock drafts. Today, just going to get through some news and notes, get caught up on a few things, and hey, it's episode 707 on the podcast, and 100 or 200 episodes ago, I talked about Bob Waterfield, and I'm not going to do that again. Hollywood Bob Waterfield, he was quite the star in LA back in the day, along with Norm Van Brocklin, Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch, Tom Fears, all those guys. And I was looking for another number seven, and after Bob Waterfield, there weren't any, and for good reason. His numbers retired. And before him, Ed Goddard and Henry Matos in 1937, Joel Hitt and Kelly Moan in 1939, and Ken Heineman in 1940. And they may have all been splendid football players, but I guess we're going to have to put the number seven to rest on this podcast as well. Not going to go there anymore. Maybe we'll revisit Bob Waterfield another day and talk about him some more. But number seven for the Los Angeles Rams is pretty much Bob. Hey, and let's go over Gennaro Felice's Mock 2.0. He's an NFL.com writer. I like to bounce around and see what other mock drafts, what's happening in other mock drafts. And players of note, Jelon Walker, number 8 to the Cowboys. I thought that was interesting given Micah Parsons is still there. Jahdae Barron, number 12 to the Panthers. And Josh Simmons, 13th to the Dolphins. He might be the best offensive tackle in this group. Colston Loveland, 14 to the Colts. And Will Johnson, 15th to the Falcons. Matthew Golden, 16 to the Cardinals. We'd be going up against him and Marvin Harrison twice a year. And Malachi Starks, number 17th overall to the Bengals. And, I wasn't a big fan of going safety for our Rams, but Scott Richmond might have talked me into it. Malachi Starks is more than just a safety, I think, but I'm still leaning offense for our Rams. Tyler Warren, 19th to the Chargers. So he went after Loveland. And Tet McMillan, T-Mac we're going to call him, went 20th to the Broncos. That was after a trade. And Trey Amos, a very popular pick for the Rams lately, 23 to the Packers. And he had the Rams trading back with the Lions and taking linebacker Jihad Campbell. And he would really elevate this defense. I'm just not convinced that that's going to happen. And that the Rams are going to go defense at all in the first round, and I could be wrong, of course, but I just don't think McVay is going to pass on some of these great running backs, tight ends, wide receivers in this draft, and either possibly even a couple of tackles. And I wanted to say something about Colston Loveland and Jahdae Barron. They were called out. I forget where I saw this, and I apologize. I like to call out where I read this stuff. Two players that might be a little bit disappointing. And the reason they called out Barron is maybe not the greatest tackler. He has short arms, and that's going to limit his ability. And they also said that some of his takeaways, his interceptions, were kind of gimmies. And Loveland, the knock on him, minor knock really, major knock, I guess it depends on how you feel about yards after catch, but said he's not really great at breaking tackles. And they even dinged Will Johnson. Two cornerbacks in this first round, likely, Barron and Johnson, and dinged Johnson for his long speed. So just calling out some concerns. And you have to wonder how happy some teams that love these guys might be to see that type of information coming out. But take it for what it's worth. Some concerns coming out about 3 players. Hey, they're still all going in the first round. They're all still going to be very good players. Just calling out some minor concerns about these premier players. And I wanted to share a roundup of all the mocks. I bounced around all over the place. And the thing that stood out is not a lot of consistency, not a consensus on what the Rams might do in this draft. And there was one player that was called out more than any other and caught me by surprise because I didn't even think he was a first rounder. But Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback, I saw twice to the Rams. Jackson Dart, Jihad Campbell, and Omarion Hampton all one apiece, as well as Benjamin Morrison, Barron, the guy we just talked about, and Josh Simmons, the tackle. Wide receiver Matt Golden. I keep on saying Matt. It's got to be Matthew, right? I know that's what Matthew Stafford would prefer. Matthew Golden and James Pierce, the edge rusher, once to the Rams. He's the edge rusher out of Tennessee. I included that on the slide here if you're watching on the video because he's a guy we haven't talked about. Trey Harris, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher. And Luther Burden, a guy that, going back and forth on him, I had kind of started to discount him. Then I loved him. And then I saw some concerns about him. And then after Ian went over the wide receivers last night, it's like, you know what? I'm back in the I like Luther Burden camp. And Trey Amos went twice to the Rams in various drafts. And the guy that led the pack, Carson Schwessinger, 3 times mocked to the Rams. And, I went through those so fast. It might have been a trade back there or two because I've seen him as a second rounder, and he's a very good player, one of the best inside linebackers in coming out of college football in this draft. Let's talk a little bit about him because we have not talked about linebackers as a group at all, and maybe we need to do that. Linebacker out of UCLA, out of Moore Park, California, by the way, 6'2", 242. And what I don't get is Lance calls him a little undersized, and I don't see that. First team All-American, led the FBS with 90 solo tackles. Lance called him a human bloodhound, rare instincts, knows how to weave his way through blocks, knows how to read offenses and blocking schemes, really quick. But the one ding on him, and the one thing I'd love to see the Rams draft, is a guy with, sideline to sideline chase speed. And that is one minor shortcoming of the linebacker out of UCLA. But if the Rams could find their way into the second round, and you know what, there are so many players in this draft that are going to settle into the second round. And if the Rams could move back and pick up a late second round pick and add another third round pick, I'd be all over that and maybe land a guy like Schwessinger. What do we have next? Hey, Ram fans have been banging on Troy Reeder at the signing of Troy Reeder, a potential new returning starting inside linebacker. And I don't go there. I know he has shortcomings, but I'm not one to throw shade on current Rams. I really hate to do it. But some Ram fans apparently were. And then Brett Stutter of Ramblin' Fan called out an exchange. Eric Weddle, Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Ram, stepped up on X in Troy's defense. He's a baller, he said. Many reasons why you stick around in the league on and off the field. And Kyle Van Noy, a linebacker, a very respected linebacker, responded and said, facts, he doesn't get that Reeder is a dog. He's a pro's pro. When he's called upon, he gets the job done. He makes plays every chance he gets. Don't make him like him no more. Delaware elites. So now I don't know what to make of that. It's nice to see players sticking up for each other, but it can be kind of hurtful, right? To see a player getting banged on social media and that's why I try to avoid doing it. I know these guys are professionals; they can take it, I suppose. But at the same time, it's nice to see NFL former teammates and NFL peers stepping up. And something to be said for Troy Reeder. He is what he is. He wore the green dot. He does understand the game. Probably going to end up coaching somewhere. But let's give the guy a chance. I think the Rams brought him back as insurance. See how this draft goes. Trying to give themselves flexibility on during the draft, and Reeder does that a little bit, right? They got three linebackers that they can sort of kind of count on. Omar Spates for sure, Nate Landman, and now Troy Reeder, and there's a couple other guys, Tony Fields, guys that can step in and maybe help out a little bit. I apologize if I'm forgetting any players, but I don't think it can hurt to bring on Troy Reeder, is what I'm saying. And if he ends up getting 20, 30 snaps for a game for us, it's not the end of the world. Is Jalen coming back? I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I know he played pretty well last year. His play has not dropped off that much. He wasn't a Pro Bowler like previous years, but I saw some stats where he was the 12th ranked cornerback in the league. He's 30 years old now. And, he may have been seeding that thought. I don't know if you caught this when Devontae Adams signed with the Rams. He gave him a shout out. You're going to love that team. You're going to love that city. And then he also, give a shout out to Raheem Morris, best coaching hire last year when they brought him on. So it's kind of the opposite of burning bridges, I guess. He didn't burn them when he left, and he's rebuilding it for a potential return to the Falcons or Rams. I don't know how I feel about it. The money would be a big part of it. And is he that outside boundary number one CB we've been looking for? Maybe put him in at the star. Man, Quentin Lake and Jalen McCullough have played very well as part of that defensive backfield. Cameron Curl and Cam Kinchins and two or three decent cornerbacks. You throw Jalen into the mix. It's an improvement. It's going to elevate this group, but there's going to be some sorting out to do. I guess as fans, we shouldn't worry about that. Let the defensive staff figure it out. But Jalen back to the Rams, that would be something else. Make a Super Bowl run with our Rams, Jalen. Come on back to your second or third home, whatever it is. Yeah, I went through a little exercise here. It occurred to me that the one advantage the Rams seem to have over the rest of the NFC West is at the skill positions. And I put together a little scoreboard here, and I ranked the 4 quarterbacks in the league, in the division, the 8 running backs, 2 a team, 12 wide receivers, 3 a team, and 4 tight ends, 1 for each team. And this is cross-country scoring, so you want to come out with the lowest score. And, so for example, Stafford, I rated him as the best quarterback. That's 1 point for you. This is not necessarily a scientific approach, but just for fun, let's walk through this. Now, who is the second best quarterback in the division? Most will say Brock Purdy, so I went ahead and gave him that. Darnold and Murray. You can make an argument for Darnold over Purdy, and you can make an argument for Murray over Darnold, but I went Darnold 3 and Murray 4 based on last year. Maybe that's not fair to Murray, but Murray just seems to disappoint over and over again, and then there's times where he just looks so incredible. But that's how I ranked them. Stafford 1, Purdy 2, Darnold 3, and Murray 4. Now let's look at the running backs. Now I went ahead and gave McCaffrey the number 1 slot, and I'm trying to be generous because, what is the likelihood he's going to make it through the season? I'm not so sure. I gave Kyron the number 2 spot. I think that's an easy call. Kenneth Walker the number 3 spot. James Conner number 4. So there's the 4 top running backs for each team. And then in the second group, Zach Charbonnet, I gave him the number 5 spot. I think that's fair. Isaac Guerendo, slightly ahead of Blake Corum. If you look at the stats, that's fair. Grendo, I think he has about twice as many yards as Corum. That's not a knock on Corum. He just needs more opportunities. And then Trey Benson, number 8, and he's been somewhat disappointing. And there's probably another running back that on another team that deserves to be ahead of him, but I'm keeping it 2 per team. So right now, Rams are probably leading the pack. I'll count the points up at the end here. Remember, low score wins. And then we have the wide receivers. I gave Puka the number 1 spot, JSN number 2. Now, Devontae Adams and Brandon Ayuk coming back from an injury, Devontae getting up there in years. But I gave Devontae the 3 spot, Ayuk the 4 spot. Now, Marvin Harrison, a lot of people would be surprised I have him at the 5 spot. But you know what? He was disappointing based on where he was drafted, but he still had a decent year. Was it 800 and something yards? I have it here somewhere, 8 TDs. So, we saw him against the Rams. He's got a lot of potential and he's probably going to improve. So I had him as my number 5 guy. Cooper Kupp, number 6, just ahead of Jawan Jennings at 7. And then the last 5 guys, kind of throw them in a hat and pick the names out. But I had, after Zay Jones at 8, Tutu Atwell 9, Michael Wilson 10, Ricky Pearsall 11. I have a feeling he's going to be climbing these rankings. And Valdez Scantling, the Cardinals' number 3 receiver at 12. Now, got to remember, this is a really strong wide receiver class in this year's draft and running back class. So if any of these teams snag one of the top-notch, highly rated wide receivers, could tilt these scores a little bit. Let's go to tight ends. And, I had Trey McBride as my number 1 tight end. I know he had trouble getting into the end zone. We saw that. Man, he finally did against the Rams, and he almost got a second one. That ball hit him in the head, not his fault, hit him in the helmet, and Ahkello Witherspoon comes up with the the interception. Well, what a great game that was. But I had him ahead of George Kittle. I think McBride's on the upside, Kittle's on the downside of their careers. No knock on Kittle. I love that guy. It's probably might be my favorite 49er of all time, and it pains me to even use those 2 words, favorite and 49er, in the same sentence. But how can you not like George Kittle? But I think if you were to ask anyone in the know who you got next season, who would you want as your tight end, I think most would take McBride ahead of Kittle. I had Higbee at the number 3 spot and Fant at number 4. I think that's fair. Could you flip those? I suppose. Tyler coming back from the injury. Looked pretty decent at the end of the season, though. And Fant, decent tight end, though. Pretty good group overall here. And the scoring, remember, low score wins. I had the Rams coming in at 26 points, the 49ers at 33, the Seahawks at 35, and the Cardinals 40. Now, it's not all about the skill positions, but that's what we're talking about here today. And I've been thinking about this for a while. Skill position wise, Rams are in really good shape against their divisional opponents. And that could change, really quickly, but that's how I see it right now. And the 49ers, without Cooper Kupp, they'd be in big trouble losing Metcalf and Lockett. So hopefully, for the Seahawks point of view anyways, hopefully Kupp is healthy and can bounce back a little bit, or they could be in trouble. But that's my tally. Rams clearly have the best skill position group in the NFC West. Trenches are important. Defense is important too. Maybe we'll talk about that another day. But that's all for now. We'll be back really soon. Hopefully, Ian will have his tight end assessment coming up. Scott Richmond's probably going to join us one more time with a position evaluation. Like to get into the linebackers, really. And mock drafts galore between now and next Thursday out here from Rams Up.